So the idea of this panel, yesterday we've had a bid of 49,000 crores for the Indian Premier League. A property that was started in 2008 in 15 years has come to this. Clearly, we have seen a lot of investment in Olympic and Paralympic sport over a period of time as well, including Tokyo. So this panel, which includes Mr. Neotia and Utsav Bhai, both of who have been team owners, corporate leaders of the city. Dinesh was actually there in South Africa the day Lalit Modi announced the IPL. So we'll hear from him. Abhijit Da was there when that $375 million bid was put by Sahara India. 1,700 crores, he's been there. He was part of that bid. Nalin and I have done multiple projects together. We've followed sport together. As I said, Dinesh was there. Utsav Bhai and Mr. Neotia still very involved in from corporate India. We've seen Utsav Bhai with Mr. Goenka. Mr. Goenka sends his regards. He would have been part of the panel. He's in London at the moment. Joydeep Da, an absolute icon of our sport. Someone who, come on. I mean, we'll see him in Wimbledon again in 10 days' time. Anybody who's followed Indian tennis, Joydeep Mukherjee, total legend. Where is tennis going? Where's corporatization of tennis or Olympic sport? Nalin, I'm sure, will address it. Ashok was with Star Sports, headed Star, now heads Z, understands the television business of sport better than anybody. So this is an absolute domain special panel because of the book, IPL, and of course the business of sport. Over to you, Nalin.
Thanks very much, Boria, and we've had a stellar first panel and the cutting of the cake, but no better time to launch a book on the origin story of the IPL, just on the back of what's been a pretty historic sale of the television rights in this round, nearly 50,000 crores for this for the next few years of the IPL. If few things are as Indian as cricket, then IPL is a global calling card. So let me begin this panel on the business of cricket by asking, because the IPL, fundamentally the wheels are spun with the money, right? So let me ask Mr. Neotia, one of India's biggest industrialists, somebody who's run FICCI, has also been an owner of a sports team, 50,000 crores roughly. Are you surprised, sir? And is it viable?
Well, certainly surprised, because in the run-up in the last few months, I was thinking that it would be astronomical, because my friends are involved very closely with it. But to really actually achieve this number is quite astounding. I have always looked at sport, since we grew up at a different era, as being something of patronage, not something that could spin this kind of resources. So it has come a long way, and of course cricket has led the process. Other sports in India, I think, are still yet to come to that magic viability where this kind of money can be. Or even, I don't think yet most of the sports are viable as a business. I think largely, in my head, sports tends to become more about things about patronage and corporate support, or even individuals and clubs and donations, and that's really how I've looked at sport. But it has evolved, and cricket has led the way, so let's hope that other sports can also get that support.
Thanks very much, Mr. Neotia. Mr. Parekh, let me ask you, as the co-owner of Atletico Kolkata, also as a leading industrialist, we've heard Mr. Neotia speak. Do you think this, when you look at the bigger pie, this is roughly 3x of what it was last time in the IPL. What's your sense of this, and will it have a knock-on effect on other sports?
First and foremost, over the last 3 to 4 years, the way cricket has become a legend, a historic moment, and as Boria often says, a religion which unifies India. This is one religion which is a unifying religion in India. I would say I was not very surprised. Surprised, of course, but very surprised, no. The way the game of cricket is becoming popular in India, and as a result in the Indian diaspora across the world, it is amazing. And what has proved is the OTT platform went higher than the television rights, and therefore I think cricket is there for years to come globally, not in India.
Oh, absolutely, and we'll come back to that story of the OTT versus the regular television. Dinesh, let me ask you. We are talking about these big numbers today, but you were there before IPL. You were as a senior journalist, as somebody who runs a talent company now, managing some of India's biggest sports stars and global sports stars like Brian Lara and so on. Tell us about that day in South Africa before the IPL was created, when Lalit Modi and the BCCI were thinking about it, and everyone was very nervous whether something like this can even work.
Yeah, in fact, I'll take you a couple of years back. Before 2007, I was at that time working with Times Now, the news channel, and BCCI were having a meeting in Delhi. I don't exactly remember whether it was special general meeting or an AGM, but Lalit had made a full-fledged presentation to the BCCI at that time. It was about IPL, it was about city, they used to call it city cricket at that point in time. I don't think the term IPL was coined. And I remember in the presentation, there was a picture of the feet of a batsman, 1 feet outside the crease, 1 feet inside the crease, and the heading was "Time to Step Out." Right. So that was the title of the presentation that Lalit made to the BCCI. And as we all know in media, that it was shot down. BCCI was not very warm to the idea of breaking the mold. They thought Indian cricket was in pink or fell.
T20 hadn't been adopted that much.
Yeah. So that was back in 2005. Now, cut to 2007, Yuvraj Singh hits 6 sixes that night against England in Durban. Lalit was there after the presentation, etc. was done. Lalit, in fact, announced a prize for Yuvraj, and the usual Lalit style. And he was wearing a blue-colored cap, which had IPL on top of it. So since I was part of the broadcasting team, we had access to the officials. So we asked him that, what is this? And typical to Lalit, he said, you'll get to know very soon. So we had a big night. India had won against England, 6 sixes and historic feat, etc., etc. The hotel was not very far where the Indian team was staying. So he gave us a sneak peek, a few journalists, he gave a sneak peek into what's coming our way. IPL, the phenomena, the kind of people that are going to be involved, the owners, that is, the Bollywood and the corporate houses. He did not make it very formal, but he gave a sneak peek that this will change the face of Indian cricket.
That's quite a story, Dinesh. Let me bring in Abhijit Sarkar into this before I come to you, Boria. Abhijit, you are a veteran sports administrator for over 30 years. For several years, you virtually ran Indian cricket in various roles. You also were part of one of the first bids in the first cycle of the IPL. Tell us a little bit about that, about what were you thinking you were buying when you made that first bid?
Asking me about the first time?
The first one, and then the second one after that.
Yeah.
And the difference.
First of all, let me congratulate Boria by coming up with a very apt name for Lalit Modi, the Maverick. He came, he conquered, but unfortunately has to leave by setting the stage by creating the largest league, sporting league of the world. Now coming to the point of the first year, that is when the tender, by the end of 2007, the tender was released. Then Mr. Modi started calling the prospective people who are interested in this league. Naturally, we were the major player, major stakeholders in cricket at that point of time. He was hell-bent that we invest in this league, we are part of this league. So we bought that ITT form, and but we were not sure about it. But just a day, around I think 48 hours or 72 hours before, he again called us, because there was within 48 hours we were supposed to submit the earnest money, 48 crores. So, but 72 hours before, we were still not sure. We said, okay, we will certainly come. We will deliver the earnest money on time. But we missed the deadline. Again he called, because he was not sure at that point of time that who are the people who will be coming for that first day bid in Bombay. So he wanted that everybody comes, and he wanted to create that competition also amongst all the bidders. See, again he called, I think just 24 hours before. He said, he convinced us, and he said, you come over, you submit the earnest money, and I will make you, the management consider that even if you have submitted that earnest money 24 hours late, you will be considered. So anyway, we went there, we submitted the earnest money, we met with our bid and handed over the bid. I personally handed over the bid to Mr. Modi. But there were two prospective bidders who are already the owners of two prominent IPL teams who objected. And I don't know, but because it was, they objected that the earnest money has been submitted late, and so they cannot be considered. So with us, there was, we were there, Mr. Biani's companies was there, and ICICI Prudential was there. So all the three people were disqualified on that basis. By the way, but I don't want to create any controversy because it cannot be corroborated.
You can create a controversy, you know.
But the bid which we had, we would have been the owner of the one of the most prominent team where we are sitting.
So let's be clear. So Abhijit Da is actually saying on record that had that bid been considered, KKR would have gone to you all.
Our bid was 83 million. Now you can calculate what was the bid.
Okay. So we've got our news point.
And tied with this, of course, is the fact that Shah Rukh Khan was brought in later. In the beginning, it was a different thing, and it's only when Shah Rukh Khan came in and then things changed. Let me ask you, Ashok. You ran a very large part of the Star business. Now run Z International. How we are now hearing about the rights holders talking about making the IPL reach every single Indian. I shouldn't really be saying this because look at the size of the growth of the quantum growth over the last 10 years or so. But is it viable?
So, at a very emotional level, sport and in particular cricket is a metaphor for life. Essentially what it says is that if everything goes wrong, you still have hope for the next delivery or the next minute or the next second. And that's why it's popular. I think talking about the IPL, I think it emerged at a time when, the issues of liberalization were over, the issues of post-independence, depression, etc. was over. And basically it gave an opportunity for India to dominate the world stage in sport, and therefore it really took over. And therefore, it's in many ways a way for Indians across the world to connect back with the home country and with their home culture. So just like cinema used to do it at one point of time, religion used to do it at one point of time, culture used to do it at one point of time, today cricket fits in that gap. And therefore, the viability comes from that point of view. Specifically from a cricket standpoint, cricket is designed as a game which gives you that plenty of opportunities to advertise. For example, every single delivery is an event, unlike a football or a hockey. I shouldn't compare sports, but for a moment, let me
tailor made for advertising.
Yeah. Similarly, at the end of every over, there's an opportunity to come in because there is storytelling involved. Hero building can happen at every single ball. And therefore, cricket by design lends itself to monetization. And therefore, the viability comes from that fundamental aspect of the game. Having said that, in the shorter format, we really see the IPL from an advertiser point of view as a wonderful platform to launch brands, to expand reach significantly, and now with the digital platform, engagement goes up significantly. And therefore, those are the three big drivers that will lead it to it. I don't want to comment on the numbers per se, but I think there are many factors going for it.
So let me bring in Boria into the thing. Boria, I want to ask you about the long-term stuff around this as a sports historian. But before we do that, let's bring it back to your book on Maverick Commissioner. I think there's a line in the beginning of your book where you quote Lalit Modi as saying, "We don't want a one-night stand with this league." It's clearly not been a one-night stand. But tell us, there's a very large section in your book which talks about the inner inside story of what went wrong in the beginning, the rise and fall of Lalit Modi. Tell us what we want to know really on what went wrong and what you pieced together as part of your investigation into this whole.
See, what went wrong with Lalit is fascinating. I mean, somebody who was running Indian cricket, and everybody, I mean, all in the BCCI loved it because the success of the IPL was such. Everybody was wanting to be with Mr. Modi. I mean, Abhijit Da will say that when that $375 million bid happened, 1,700 crores in 2010 was a lot of money. He was bringing in money that was unheard of, right, in the echelons of our sport. But at the same time, Lalit was becoming bigger than the BCCI. And if you think about that 420 crore controversy, the parking of rights, I don't want to go into nitty-gritties, but a lot of things started happening. The cancellation, I mean, the way the Kochi franchise was handled. Why was Lalit not wanting to sign the document, the franchise papers, when he had signed Sahara? He had signed Sahara. Their franchise paper was signed around the 29th, 30th of March.
Theirs was 375 million.
375 million. Kochi was 333. The thing had happened on 21st March, if I remember right. And the media, the first report of some discord started appearing around the 6th of April. So even the media didn't know that, you know, even all of us, that there's something going on here. What's going on? And having spoken to the people who were running the board at that point, Lalit was just not signing. Apparently, one day, he was met in that Four Seasons hotel by the lawyers and the Kochi franchise owners, and he said, "I'm coming, you guys just reprint it, I don't like the font." And he went to Bangalore. So they were reprinting it, and he left the hotel, went to Bangalore. He was actually chased to Bangalore. And then that night at 3 a.m., he finally signed the Kochi document at 5:30, he tweeted.
And
he
that,
tweeted, and what
he
he
signed
tweeted,
it,
we know.
And then he signed it after he was told, if you don't sign, Mr. Srinivasa will sign it tomorrow.
Correct. So he was told by the BCCI president then that if he doesn't sign, he will be overruled and the secretary will sign it, because ultimately the IPL is a subcommittee of the board. And then 2 hours later at 5 o'clock in the morning, Lalit tweeted the shareholding pattern.
So there is a line.
During the, can I say?
Yes, absolutely.
Because you asked that question, sir, and he reminded me. During that second bid which we won, so the base price was increased from 50 million to 250 million. So then a day before we reached ITC Chola, there was full excitement. All the senior BCCI functionaries were there, and the other bidders were also there. And just 24 hours before, all of a sudden, there was lots of maneuvering going on. All of a sudden, people who were not even friendly became more friendly with me. And there are all the people who are guiding us. I think the figure should be around 270. Somebody came, I said, I think it should be 280, 290. So they kept on saying, guiding us, don't go beyond this. There was only one functionary who said it should be over 330, between 330 and 340. So we came up with the bid of 370 million. It was, and other people were on 319. That was the different bid.
The story was an astrologer. So may I ask, interrupt you there? And Boria, in the book you have a story about this, what he's saying about the bid being 370. It was going to be 330, but there's that extra 40 million came.
He was there when I interviewed Subroto Roy. I asked Subroto Roy on record, said that 330 was the second bid. Why did you pay 375 million? He was sitting there next to me. He said, my astrologer said 375 million. I put in 375.
It was the number one figure, actually. 7 plus 3 is 10, 1.
So that's exactly what Subroto Roy said on record in that particular interview. I put in $45 million more because my astrologer.
People wanted us to bid below that figure, so that the other people win. That sort of campaigning was going on.
So, Mr. Neotia, today the IPL is on a per match value behind only the US NFL. It's ahead of the EPL, it's ahead of the NBA, it's ahead of the Major League Baseball. When I was listening to Ashok talking about the sheer emotionality of it, his linkage with Indianness, if you like, and often trumping Bollywood. One of the big issues when IPL first started was when they were first trying to rustle up the first owners, like Boria has talked about in the first season. One of the questions a lot of the owners had was, what are we buying? We're not buying a stadium. You're not giving us any assets. We give you so much of money. Humko milega kya? But do you think that emotion, that idea that was simply a sort of, or a wing in a prayer? I mean, as a business leader, somebody had come to you that time, how would you react?
See, I think we take away from the sport by looking at it as purely as a business. I think if Boniji was here, he would also say that cinema is as much about passion as much about commerce. I think sport has to be seen differently than, say, making houses or making steel or making cement. Of course, if it can make business sense, it makes it more viable and sustainable. But essentially, it's about the sense of competition, the way it unifies the country, the people who are involved, the young kids who get inspired by it, etc., etc. So there's a much larger purpose that sports, and I think initially I would assume that most of the people who got involved, I'm not sure that they did it solely for the purpose of commerce, because they were very, very big organizations. At that time, IPL was not such a big thing, and nobody knew its potential. Would I think that somebody like Mr. Ambani was doing it for money? Probably not. I think they just thought that it's a great thing to be involved with, because it's something that unifies our nation, it excites people in the country, and if it makes good money, that's very good. If it doesn't, let it be also. And that was the motivation of Utsav Bhai, myself and Sanjeev when we started ATK also and the ISL. We of course hoped that it will become viable, which unfortunately it hasn't. But we didn't really do it with an intent that it's going to be a money spinner. We knew it's going to lose money for a while. It's been a little longer than that while, so that's a separate story. But I think that's very important when we look at sport. We should not look at it purely from the point of view of how much money it makes.
Then with your permission, I want to ask Joydeep Dada. Joydeep Dada, when you hear 49,000 crores, he just said ISL doesn't make money. You led India to Davis Cup victories. I talk 1960s, 1974. You've made Wimbledon, you've won many. When you see the state of tennis, do you feel angry? Do you feel that other sports should get some money at least? When I see IPL stars getting crores and crores, somebody who's never played a game gets a bid of some 10 crores or so, and tennis players struggling. I mean, not the top 10. Top 10 has enough and more, but a genuine player, take an upcoming IPL star, crores, an upcoming tennis star, not even thousands. Your thoughts?
First of all, thank you for inviting me to be with the panel and be here. Great to see you again. I know, wish your book all the very best. Yes, not hurt, but it's. I'm happy for sports, happy for a sportsman of our country. That some people are making their livelihood through sports. Earlier on, when we played the game, we used to play tennis, whatever it was, and then you have a job, go get a job in Tata's or ACC or whatever, they sponsor you. But now sports become very professional, and that is thanks to IPL. But unfortunately, what is happening, the Indian youth, every young boy, girl now, their thing is just to get into IPL. There's so much money in the game. So as such, the other games are suffering. Youngsters, everyone, like earlier it was tennis, hockey, football.
Now people want to become Neeraj Chopra also.
I don't think so. I mean, Neeraj Chopra, you need a build like that. You have to be tough. This is an average man's game. Cricket, tennis, cricket, and like look at Roger Federer. He looks like or Djokovic. So this sports really has hit the masses so much that now you have players coming in from smaller cities. Earlier on, there's only Tiger Pataudi and Jaisimha, Abbas Ali Beg, and few others from Bombay, Farooq, and etc. But now you have guys coming in from all over, Rajkot, Ranchi. You take it, and that's great for sports. And nothing like it. India should get better and better. But unfortunately, every young kid, tennis academy in our academy or whatever, is thinking of also is playing. There's no money in tennis because tennis money comes in when you get in the top 100 or 200 in the world.
So let me ask a follow-up question on this. You're right in terms of when the money comes to other sports, it comes only after you have become successful. This is something Gopi Chand has often said in the past. Even with the Olympic podium scheme, for example, Mary Kom got money after she became a world champion, not before, right? So the question I want to ask Ashok and Mr. Parekh both is, in the last 4 or 5 years, apart from the IPL, we've had a profusion of other sports leagues in this country, all of which began as television, based on the money and power of television. The Kabaddi League, which you were involved in, you had the Hockey League, you had various other leagues, the Football League, which you both have been intimately involved in. The penetration, now of course, cricket has always been 80-90% of the market, but with the beginning of these leagues, even the Badminton League, do you see those growing, or they've sort of somehow got stuck at a certain threshold since then? And that's the question for both of you.
I think absolutely, it's a good question. Look, let me start with a statistic. You know, we're talking about the IPL going north of $6 billion. The total sports industry is about $600-700 billion. So we're talking about 1% of that with IPL. What triggers this industry? I think what triggers this industry is various things. One, infrastructure. Two is policies. Three is nothing begets success than success. So you have, you know, champions coming up in that sport, and more people are inspired to follow that sport. I think it's a matter of, and then the leagues. You know, it's established across the US that if you can catch people young at the university level, it's the sure shot way to make sure that the sport becomes popular. I think it's a matter of time before some of these leagues make it. You know, it's probably at the cusp, but it'll take a lot of effort in terms of making that happen. One of the things that we, Joydeep actually talked about it, which is basically that the IPL auction number we all know, but I think behind the scenes there's a whole lot of flurry of activity going on. What are those? One, the sport has moved from metros to smaller towns to rural. Two, it's gone from linear to digital. Three, we're talking about a women's IPL. All this is development of the sport. Now that's an example of cricket. The same thing has to happen with other sports. So I think it's an ecosystem just to come through. It'll take concerted effort, policy, and the will to make it happen. I think it's a matter of time.
Mr. Parekh?
I agree what he's saying, but two things which I feel are the trigger point for anything to be a success story. IPL rode the success on India winning the T20 Cup 2007. Similarly, in other sports, like how we have won the badminton tournament now, Thomas Cup, that will be the threshold for badminton to come up. So what India wants is a sport where India excel, the Indian sportsmen excel, and automatically that will become a popular sport as time comes back. So the importance is that the Indian players, Indian sportsmen are in the top 100, top 50, what Mr. Mukherjee just said.
So Dinesh, if that is true, will your talent management company, I mean, do you think, say suppose we win 10 medals in Paris, will it happen? Or do you think when that 2007 World Cup made the IPL? What's your take? I mean, will you back youngsters from other sports like the way you back Brian Lara?
Well, I don't think the Indian market has warmed up to that point. That to have young, say, tennis stars or hockey stars, like we all saw what happened with the Hockey League, right? It started, it was doing well, but you know, it's nowhere now, gone off the scene. I think that the point that Ashok also made, it's about the policies. It's about how the sport is run in the country. Of course, we need success at the top to inspire the generations. But what also needs to be seen is with all, I mean, you and me in the media, for us, BCCI is always the punching bag. With all its pitfalls, with all its negatives, I think they still run the game, right? So I think probably the other associations, the other organizations need to take a leaf out of that. That how do you run the country? How do you run the sport in this country? And I think perhaps the challenge is that there is so much infighting in some of the associations. There is so many issues that needs to be resolved. That probably the way the sport is shaping up outside of cricket, it's not really conducive to say that yes, the other sport, the country has warmed up to other sport.
So Dinesh, I want to ask a follow-up question connecting what Joydeep was saying earlier. Boria, when we did the Olympics book, and Pulela Gopichand told us that when he had started out, there were maybe 30-40 kids in India who could play badminton at that level. But over a period of time, after the success of Nehwal, after the success of Sindhu, as the catchment area increased, there were probably now 300, 400 kids who can play at that level, because that penetration increased beyond just the immediate nursery. Now the IPL is now a big feeder for the Indian team. We've seen that in this thing. But also, I mean, this is something, Dinesh, we were talking about this before we came on stage. Ultimately, many of these kids are still 18 and 19-year-olds, right? And when you have so much of money floating in the system, everybody wants the money, and all other sports, we can take a leaf from it. But also, what does it do? What kind of other support system is required to manage these kids? Because ultimately you can all just completely go haywire, right? So
Yeah. No, I think like we were discussing, see, a 19-year-old, 20-year-old is a 20-year-old, right? If he gets tons and tons of money in an IPL auction, he needs hand-holding big time. And I don't think that's enough. I'm a talent manager. I mean, you can do as much, but I think there should be a system in place where they need some sort of guidance that, what do you do with this kind of money, and whether this panel has talked about it enough, that whether this IPL paycheck is the be all and end all. Do you want to aspire to play for the country? Is that the real big deal? So I think at that age, in those formative years, when they get that big fat paycheck, that's where they need the guidance, that's where they need role models, that's where they need mentors in those dressing rooms, who can tell them, hey, this is fine, but this is a long winding road ahead of you.
Boria, you wrote a piece in the Economic Times today on the summing up the long view on what's happening now with the IPL. We've heard Jay Shah speak about a possible women's league. We've heard about a window being created in the ICC calendar for the IPL. If you can sum up for us the 4 or 5 long-term trends you see with this auction and the way forward for IPL and sport.
One is definitely digital being more valued than television. That for me was the first takeaway. 23,500 for TV, 23,700 for digital. First takeaway. Second, people thought Sanjeev was mad when he put in that 7,000 crore bid. A lot of people thought he was mad. CVC Capital 5,600. Now if you see that $6 billion bid and how much these fellows will make, Sanjeev's team will be valued at $1 billion plus in terms of valuation. All these teams will become unicorns soon. So it's not so much an unreasonable, it was not an ego bid, it was thought out and they got it right. So the amount of money that will, and he's got it for 10 years. This is for 5 years. Imagine 5 years later what the valuation can be if India grows, if COVID comes under control and all of that happens, right? Number 3, what will this do to the women's IPL? You asked me 4. Women's IPL, I mean now, if 1% of this money comes to the women's game, every woman sitting in this audience will earn in the top bracket on the country. Every woman. Every person who practices in Joydeep Das Academy will earn less than that. That is the kind of money we are talking about. 50,000 crores is just TV rights. Add teams, add sponsorship, add 20 other things to it. That's the IPL corpus. It is more than 100,000 crores now. Right? That is the valuation you're talking about. So the trend that I am seeing, and I think this will percolate into other sport. Because if the Prime Minister of the country inaugurates a chess Olympiad, if the Prime Minister of the country auctions Olympic memorabilia, if the Chief Minister of this particular state pushes sports people in the manner that she's doing, and this is not a trend here or in Delhi, I'm seeing, look at Naveen Patnaik, look at the number of hockey pitches that India now has in Odisha, shooting academy in Odisha, hockey academy in Odisha, the number of badminton courts in Bengaluru, Gopi tells me 6,000 badminton courts
and
in
the
Bengaluru.
facilities in Madhya Pradesh, for example.
Facilities in Madhya. So I think India is on the cusp. Yes, cricket is too far ahead, but I do think Paris in terms of Olympics and Paralympics, and I'm really sort of hoping this happens for tennis, where I don't see it that great, because post this generation, the Leander, Mahesh, Sania generation, despite the efforts and again infighting, somebody alluded to it, but the Indian sporting scene, according to me, looks bright. You need a Lalit Modi for other sports, boss. Get a Lalit Modi, it's not bad. I mean, Lalit was not all bad.
Absolutely, Boria. And I think what he did was basically open the box, if you like.
Okay, when I'm saying Lalit Modi, this is Calcutta, let's give due credit to Jagmohan Dalmia. He was the original pioneer. Lalit followed in his footsteps. So Mr. Dalmia, when he took over the ICC, they had 16,000 crores. When he left, they had 10 times, right? That's when the money potential was unearthed.
That's even later. Even before that, he made India
Correct. So Lalit was following that. Now we've seen what Saurav and Jai and these fellows have done. I do want to see the Rajiv Mehtas, the Narendra Batras, the Anil Khannas, all of them. I mean, you take associations, Dinesh knows what goes on. Abhijit Da is part of, I think, 10 of them. Ask him what goes on. Ask him why is there no election at the IOA, boss? No election, man. Every association is in court.
You also served in the...
Yeah, I'm the executive council member.
He is. So that is the problem, Nalin. We win an Olympic medal, automatically that's when AAFI gets recognition. Dr. Batra has done some good work in hockey. But the other associations are suffering.
Abhijit, you want to add to that?
Bhoria, you just said the one thing we were mentioning, that Lalit became bigger than BCCI, bigger than the event. So whatever, even if some individual is doing something, either in shooting, either in wrestling, either in hockey, but if the individual becomes more than that institution or the game, then that game suffers. So, like, who knows better than Abhinav Bindra? When he won the gold, his father, me and you were speaking, and his father said, he is the Shah Rukh Khan of sports. And he started demanding, he knows talent management person, and he started expecting that that should be his value. But he was not recognized for that. Because it didn't, the association thought that he is a competitor, that which the association should have taken advantage of his achievements. So, as far as the leagues are concerned, hockey has certainly gained by the hockey league. Badminton has certainly gained. Early on, there used to be sporadic champions. Now you are champions, long list that you were mentioning about badminton. See what has happened to hockey. But after 1 or 2, 3 years, all the leaders of the associations, they want their own publicity, not the players. Players are bigger than the association heads.
I think it was worthwhile. Thank you very much.